and welcome to another episode of Table Talk with Joe. Manipur has been witnessing violence for almost 2 months. On the show today, we will be telling you what most of the mainstream media is not telling you. But the silence of that media is only second to the silence of the establishment.
It has been more than 50 days since the unrest in Manipur. More than 4,000 houses have been destroyed. At least 60,000 people have been displaced. But despite calls for president's rule in the state, there seems to be no movement as of now to replace the BJP-led Biren Singh government. Reports also say 250 churches and 17 temples have been burned or damaged in the ethnic clashes.
On the show today, we're focusing not just on Manipur, but also looking back at 5 big events where the government chose puzzling silence over a demand for timely intervention or even a reaction.
Since May 3rd, there has been a series of violence and many incidents has occurred. Nearly 40,000 people have been displaced, and many cookies from the valley have gone to the hills, and vice versa. From More to Chandpur and the other hill districts, the Meiteis have also been displaced. There has been violent incidents where people have been killed due to shootouts between unidentified persons. People are saying they may be cookie militants, and some have been killed. At least 9 persons were killed in the last incident. 9 Meiteis were killed. Churches have been torched, and there is a complete lack of law and order situation in the state.
The Prime Minister has still not spoken about the violence engulfing Manipur, and the Home Minister Amit Shah called an all-party meeting only after the state had been burning for more than a month and a half. Shah's only visit to Manipur came 3 weeks after the violence broke out. Ethnic clashes broke out on the 3rd of May in capital Imphal after Naga and Kuki tribes took part in a rally to protest the majority Meitei ethnic group being granted special status under the scheduled tribe quota. The Meiteis, who are predominantly Hindu, account for almost half of the state's population. As a scheduled tribe, they would benefit in sectors of health, education and government jobs. It is this that the Cookies, many of whom are Christian, fear. They say it will take away their opportunities.
Well, honestly, nothing explains Prime Minister Narendra Modi's continued silence over Manipur, a state which has been burning since 3rd of May this year. The endless violence has claimed so many lives, over 110 for sure, including those of residents, of ordinary citizens, of security personnel, of our Jawans. The Indian Army is under immense heat and pressure there. Continued, in fact, disconnection of internet communications in the state. But the Prime Minister came back from US, from Egypt. He did chair a high-level meeting, but there's still not been one statement, one message, one appeal for peace and calm.
Experts who are in touch with events on the ground say it is almost a civil war situation with no clarity anymore. Over 4,000 weapons have been looted from the police and state armory, and barely a small percentage of them have been recovered.
The BJP government has failed to protect the public, has failed to uphold the law and order, and the ministers and the MLAs are not able to do anything. Neither is Narendra Modi saying anything about Manipur.
On Sunday, 12 militants belonging to the Meitei separatist group, the Kangli Yawol Kanalup KYKL, were released after a women-led mob of around 1,200 people stopped an army convoy. After the handing over, the army said it was the human face of the Indian Army.
China is observing what's happening out there, and China is not very far. So we have a situation where there's China, where there is a restive Myanmar. We have itself in the states 33 groups, 40 insurgent groups, a lot of civilian guerrilla groups, and let's not forget in 2015 because of a firing that happened and some Cookie died. The Cookies refused to bury the body for 632 days. Agitations in Manipur can go on forever. They are prepared for it. They don't give up very easily. So this civil war is not getting done very easily, and I think Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Narendra Modi should understand this. There was a time in 2001 when the government of India and the BJP government had to roll back the territorial treaty that they had signed.
Mainstream media's reaction to events that unfold in the Northeast are lukewarm at the best of times, unless, of course, the wrestlers, the boxers, win us medals at the Olympics. But their silence this time is profound. And it's a sad reflection that more airspace is being given to MS Dhoni playing Candy Crush than to the violence that is unfolding in the state.
It's very, very disturbing, to say the least, for me to see that a part of Northeast is burning. But I don't understand what exactly is going on there. I am not on the ground. I keep hearing reports. I don't know which side to believe in anymore, because it had been such in last few decades that I have to finally find out on my own way that what is actually going on there. I had been reading stories, what is happening in Russia today, somebody is marching towards Moscow. What is actually going on there? I have no clue. I have to believe in either CNN or Fox. I'm like, where do I go? Who do I think is unbiased? How do I know
dilemma,
that CNN is less biased than Fox and Fox is less biased than CNN? I have no idea, no way to prove it. So I have to find my own judgment, find a way to arrive at my own conclusion. So it is very difficult, and I am very wary of nowadays, very, very suspicious of taking anybody's viewpoint as like this is the truth. No, it is not.
Tribal leaders say this is a point of no return, and CNN quotes one as saying, "What we are witnessing here, unfortunately, is that there seems to be a very systematic, well-planned series of attacks. The execution is almost clinical, and they know exactly the houses where people from tribal communities reside."
To the tribal, especially to the Kuki Jomi group, definitely this is a point of no return. But why am I saying this is because not just throwing outward out there, because if you look at the valley, that is in full area, the population of the Jomi Kuki, fortunately the Nagas are still there, fortunately or unfortunately, that's how you take it. But if you look at the entire community, the population has been cleansed from that valley, and they have been running away or been moved to the hills of their respective community. And also a lot of people have come to Shillong, Guwahati, Delhi and other places, Mizoram, a lot of them. So then now if you are looking at the news and the picture, the demographic divide has become more or less complete, and the government itself has created buffer zone along the boundaries, I would say the boundaries which exist now. So therefore there is a complete separation of population. That's one factor why it is a point of no.
Opposition parties, including the Congress, have been demanding the removal of the Chief Minister Biren Singh, saying peace is not possible in the state under him.
हमारी अब दो ही मांगे हैं। पहली मांग ये है कि 100 मन की बात हो चुके हैं। प्रधानमंत्री ने 100 मन की बात कही है, पर एक बार मणिपुर की बात भी बोलते हैं। ये वक्त आ गया है मणिपुर पर प्रधानमंत्री को चुप्पी तोड़ने के लिए, और प्रधानमंत्री की ओर से सद्भावना का संदेशा जाए मणिपुर के अलग अलग समुदायों को कि सरकार की ओर से हर प्रयास किया जा रहा है अमन और शांति और सद्भावना वापस लाने में।
Biren Singh has himself lost the confidence of his party members with a rebellion from Kuki tribal leaders within the state BJP, who say people have lost faith in the state government. For now, he continues. The Meiteis live in the more developed Imphal Valley, where the Naga and Kuki groups live in the protected hill districts. If the Meiteis get the scheduled tribe tag the Kukis fear, they will be removed from the protected areas. They say that most development benefits are already with the Meiteis, while also alleging that 40 of the state assembly's 60 seats are reserved for Meiteis, while they are only half of the population. Manipur's border with Myanmar has also complicated matters. It shares a 400-kilometer border which is mostly porous, and illegal immigration from Myanmar are of the Chin ethnic group, which are a subgroup of the Kukis.
You have a porous and a very sensitive border with Myanmar. Myanmar is world's 4th largest producer of opium. Manipur itself produces enough narcotics. The Biren Singh, the man who should be responsible and held accountable for everything that has happened in the last 1.5 months in Manipur, started this as a war against drugs. A very similar war that his neighbor Himanta Biswa Sarma in Assam started, another of his BJP colleague. In both these, that they were targeting a community. At least that was the perception. In this one, clearly it was a perception because most of these poppy fields were in the Kuki-dominated area. We don't consider these areas conflict areas. They are not Rwanda, or they are not Sierra Leone. They are not Afghanistan, but they are Manipur and Nagaland. I'm glad that they are not Sierra Leone and Afghanistan and Rwanda. But I think the rule of reportage applies same in all conflict areas, where to use truth is the biggest casualty.
Those following Manipur will of course understand that both sides need to be brought to the table, but the lack of administrative urgency has led to some serious questions. But there are answers. You only need to look at how the wrestlers were treated to get them.
India's top women wrestlers say they will now fight their battle against the Federation chief Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh in court and will not resume their street protests. But on the day Vinesh Fogart, Sakshi Malik and Bajrang Punia made the announcement, the Guwahati High Court stayed the election of the Wrestling Federation of India on a plea by the Assam Wrestling Association. Just a quick recap. In January, some of India's elite wrestlers began a protest in Delhi for the arrest of the WFI chief and the powerful BJP leader Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. They say he has sexually abused multiple wrestlers. They withdrew the agitation after being assured by the Sports Ministry of investigation into their allegation by an oversight committee. 3 months later, when there was no headway in the government report, the wrestlers resumed their protest. Just before the Prime Minister left for his trip to the US, the minor who had alleged harassment by Brij Bhushan withdrew her FIR against the stringent POCSO Act. The other FIR includes at least 2 instances of demanding sexual favors in lieu of professional assistance, at least 15 incidents of sexual harassment, along with several instances of intimidation, including stalking. No one has come to their help.
India's champion wrestlers have waged a lonely battle. They got no response from the sports minister or the women and child development minister, but in the end, it was sports that was itself a loser. The battle was a lonely one. The battle was an individual one. And it is something that resonates with all those who fought to keep their loved ones alive during the second wave of the Delta wave, in fact, of the COVID.
April and May 2021 are not easy to forget. It was a time when death and devastation was all around India's capital Delhi, and every other household was struck in grief. As the Delta wave hit, oxygen had run out and the drug remdesivir was being sold in the black market. When the crisis broke, the government was still exporting it. Civil society came together on social media and otherwise to arrange for hospital beds, oxygen cylinders and even a place for cremations. As bodies were found floating on the Ganga, there was government paralysis, and apart from the odd unscientific nuskas of eating papad to boost immunity as claimed by a ruling politician or smearing the body with cow dung, people were left on their own. As oxygen began to run out, hospitals started sending SOS and begging while people gasped their last breath, waiting outside these hospitals hoping for a miracle. It didn't come. Yet the government told Parliament later that no one had died due to lack of oxygen. When the Delta hit, India was proudly claiming its Vaccine Maitri, an outreach program of supplying vaccine to countries. WHO claims that India's death numbers are at least 4 times as reported. Multiple reports say that India has attempted to delay an effort by the World Health Organization to revise the global death toll from COVID-19 after its calculations suggested that the country had undercounted its dead by an estimated 3.5 million. In September 2020, the government passed 3 farm laws without any debate in Parliament. Then it stayed silent. As thousands of farmers marched to Delhi's border and set up camp in the cold and COVID, the only response came from the police, that is controlled by Amit Shah-led Home Ministry. Tear gassed them and set up barricades to prevent them from marching further. Ironically, the Congress accused the government of trying to silence all those who reported the truth on the farmers' agitation with arrests and sedition charges. 4 farmers were killed in UP's Lakhimpur Kheri after a convoy of 3 SUVs, including one owned by Minister of State for Home Ajay Mishra and reportedly being driven by his son, mowed down the protesters. The farmers did not budge, finally forcing the government to repeal the laws, also without any discussion. Political experts at the time linked the decision to the forthcoming elections in Punjab and Uttar Pradesh.
Ajay Mishra, like Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, was not removed from his post despite the outrage. Mass movements, they do get some kind of attention, say experts, but only those that can sustain it. like the women of Shaheen Bagh.
In December 2019, anger against the controversial Citizenship Amendment Law spilled onto the streets across the country. This law defined citizenship on the basis of religion, making it easier for Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Jains and Buddhists from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan to become Indian citizens. Conspicuously, it does not mention Muslims. As the government remained silent, Section 144 was imposed in several areas, police entered university campus, and once again there was an internet clampdown. This is when the women of Shaheen Bagh began a peaceful protest against the alleged Discriminatory Citizenship Act. As the temperatures dropped, the numbers increased, with women chanting slogans and singing songs of resistance. A majority of these women were elderly, several above the age of 80, but no one came to speak with them. In February 2020, they sat with placards asking, "Modi, tum kab aoge?" But no one came, nor were the women invited for talks. Instead, even the old women were maligned and trolled. The pandemic lockdown eventually did to the protest what the administration could not.
From communal violence to hate speech, the theme has been common, that of silence. It is easier for Bollywood actors to get a selfie with the Prime Minister, or even for beauty pageant contestants to get a congratulatory tweet, than for our champion wrestlers to get a vote when they speak up about sexual violence or violence itself in Manipur.
He could have just put out a message, in a televised sort of a recorded format, because in crisis and confidence lies the true test of leadership. And this has kind of been a pattern of sorts, because in the past also, be it the restless protest, be it the farmers' agitation, to of course, the Delhi riots, in most such occasions, the Prime Minister, who otherwise is very active on Twitter in responding to foreign diplomats, foreign ambassadors, on tweeting about Yoga Day, on millet sustainability, he chooses to stay silent. There could be domestic strategic calculations behind that, with his domestic constituency, with his voters, but it's unexplained and unfortunate, because he is the elected leader of the world's largest democracy, and at a time when Manipur is burning, for the government to be putting out those tweets, those hashtags talking about 9 years of prosperity in Northeast, it really seems a lot ironical and very sad.